Hello, welcome to SquishiVision, where I'm gonna give my thoughts at the moment. Oh wow, this is not happy. This is no, we don't want this. Why am I all like negative sparkly? We didn't ask for negative sparkles. Time to get rid of those. Right, that's a bit better. I mean, there's not an exact balance for what you're gonna do. Hi, I'm giving my thoughts to the final episode of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or I guess the Captain and the Winter Soldier, now one world, one people. Gonna try to do as fast as I can because in about 15 minutes I have to go dash off to read Ferrari. So yeah, let's start. Yeah, there were several parts of the episode I expected to happen, several parts of the episode I didn't expect to happen. And several parts I think fell short, and several parts which kind of went not short, long, no, on target. Okay, well, first of all, Sam Wilson as Captain America completely and utterly like landed on all points that they needed to. That was fantastic. I loved everything from the introduction of him as Captain America, and literally every beat of his involvement in the whole rescue operation. You know, everything he did, his whole unique way of solving the problem, the way he took charge, the way that he utilized his existing skills. My God, what is up with this? It's almost like I can feel it. I don't understand what's going on here. I've just had to move my studio light back to where it came from and then back here again in order to film some stuff. But this shouldn't be a this shouldn't be a massive. Okay, let's finish now. I'll just not lean forward because apparently that's the issue. No. It keeps appearing and go away. What is going on here? Okay, I stopped. Okay, I'll keep talking. Hopefully it doesn't come back. Yeah, so it's everything like it was amazing. Like I just loved it all. Like his unique way of kind of solving the problem of the whole like helicopter issue. That was great. And he looks good in the role as well. Even though there's this weird situation where like the top half of his head isn't scalp is uncovered, which I didn't get. But like apart from that, ignoring that, the rest of it was great. And like the way he kind of balanced, and the fact that we saw Red Wing, and I love the whole kind of I love how Red Wing saved that pilot and just like yanked him out of the helicopter. Like everyone's reaction, you know, people like applauding him. It was great, and the whole like symbology of it, and like I just loved it all. Like people like saying, "Oh, that's Captain America," and people applauding the way he got public appraisal. It was all great. Yeah, and then so then the Joe Walker thing. Didn't expect that. I don't like to build him up to be like this like final like probably like either the main big like we felt he was gonna be some sort of kind of antagonistic force in this episode. Like they built him up that way, and obviously that's how he was kind of going in the general series. And even like in the end of the last episode where we it was like Val appeared and Val was like, I recognize your talents. I'm going to put you to use. I don't know why I'm putting this accent on because that's not her accent, but whatever. And gave him a fake card and was like, I'll give you a call. And it's like, oh, is she going to like sponsor him to be the new villain kind of deal? And like at first, it also appeared like he was going to do that as well. Like he appeared, he tried to like fight and get revenge on the Flag Smashers. He got pretty much whooped immediately, which I thought was hilarious because it was like, even though he's now got the super soldier serum inside him, he's still like complete wuss compared to like everyone in general. And then he ended up needing to be saved by Bucky, and then like after that he was like actually acting like a hero, and like he stopped going chasing revenge in order to help save that truck. When he joined up with Bucky and Falcon to go and chase down Carrie and the rest of Flag Smashers, he wasn't being aggressive. He was playing completely ball. He was acting as a team. It was a bit whiplash, really. Generally wasn't expecting him to kind of act like in a way. But the thing is, it didn't seem like unnatural. I don't know. It's a whiplash, but it didn't seem a very unnatural whiplash. it was almost like it was very self-aware, which is why I'm not, which is why it doesn't feel contrived, because it feels more self-aware than contrived. That he was, and I think did a good job of building on his nuances at the beginning. The way he was acting like genuinely a nice guy who was just responding to a lot of pressure. But it was a very natural progression from that to a villain that was very kind of well done. Which I kind of meant like as a villain, he was somewhat sympathetic. Like you can understand that someone who already has a level of toxicity inside them could be manipulated by the pressures upon him. River, why are you shouting? My cat's shouting. River, what's wrong? What? He was shouting at me. Yeah, what's up? You can come join the stream. That's fine. Yeah, but then like he kind of switched back to the hero side. But like reason why it doesn't feel like much of a whiplash is this is kind of more. This is kind of how we. This is kind of how we saw John Walker in the early episodes. So it kind of matches out, really, doesn't it? Yeah, like that's like how everyone kind of accepted him. But then we got like a weird thing at the end, and when Val's like, now you're the US agent, and he's wearing his more US agent clothes, which is black instead of blue and then red to white stripes, which is obviously what he eventually turns out to be in the comics. And he's kind of like, haha, I'm back, and he does like a clap, and he's like, haha. Just such a random, it's like a weird scene to add on. I mean, it's not weird, it takes me out of the episode, it just seems like it's very deliberate. But I'm not sure what's going on there. I guess it's well, in the comics, from what I've read, the US agents are very kind of, sometimes he's antagonistic, sometimes he's a hero, sometimes he's an anti-hero. He kind of switches between that. He's one of those characters. So it seems like they're trying to portray all sides at once, and they're not necessarily doing a bad job of it. But it's like, well, what direction are you going in this? I'm not entirely sure. I love Val. I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but apparently she was meant to be Black Widow first, and then here it's meant to be her second appearance, and obviously that flipped around. So I'm excited to see what they do with her in Black Widow. Hopefully it doesn't feel like a step back because we're seeing it in reverse order. Oh, I love the part where Bucky gets kind of, where someone says, thank you for saving me to Bucky. Because I don't think Bucky's really had that hero moment yet. Like, he's always been acting in the background after he stopped being a Winter Soldier. So he's not really been a hero. It's actually, if we watched the episode, there was that moment where he, like, kind of walks towards the beginning where he approaches the situation and the guards let him pass. And like, oh, there you go, Barnes. It's like, wait, is he, like, do they know he's, like, what's happening with that? Like, the context we're given for heroes at the moment isn't like they're kind of, I don't know. I guess they recognize him as an Avenger and they're like, well, I guess he's fine and let him through. But it's not as if he's like sanctioned to do that. I don't know. I'm kind of unsure where the whole hero situation lies at the moment. Can these spots disappear, please? That's grand. But yeah, it was really nice that Bucky got that moment. And then he came back to Sam's house and he was like, they were all having fun. And that was such a sweet thing to end the series on. Okay, so that was that bit. Sharon Carter as the power broker. I mean, we all kind of saw it coming, I guess. I mean, I wasn't surprised. I guess it might have thrown Val in. I said front Val in. Val might be included in this season to sort of give us a last minute kind of red herring, and it kind of fell away. Like, I was like, oh, actually, is this character maybe the power broker, not Sharon in the first place? But no, it turns out it is. Sharon's the power broker. And now I need to kind of watch back, or at least read back on the season and work out actually what the power broker is doing in the background and work out if it actually is consistent with Sharon Carter's motivations. I'm not entirely sure at the moment because they kind of peppered in mentions of the power broker, but it was like very like kind of informed that this was happening, so you don't really. And then obviously now they reveal that Sharon's a power broker, so now you've got to like go back and be like, well, how well does this match? I'm still not really sure about the whole premise of Sharon Carter because it doesn't really make sense to me that they would forget to pardon her. It doesn't make sense. Like, I don't get why having the privilege of being an Avenger was the reason why you're pardoned. Surely if they're gonna pardon all the Avengers for, being involved in the whole Winter Soldier. Like, if we're gonna pardon the Winter Soldier, surely they'd pardon all of the people who were complacent and complicit in that, like, blanket wise. Like, if Sharon Carter turned up like, oh, Sharon Carter, you're under arrest, she's like, well, why am I under arrest for? Because you helped with Winter Soldier. I'm like, but he's pardoned. Like, oh yeah, he is. Why do we care about you? We don't. Surely that was what would happen. I need more explanation. This seems like a very weak, contrived situation. It doesn't really fit with logic. And because I can't get behind that, I can't get behind that being motivation for her being evil, if that makes sense. I got about 5 minutes left. So, okay. One of the themes and political messages of well, there's a whole political there's one thing that's done is about blackness and identity, and how you match that up with acting on behalf of or wearing the symbology of a government or nation or state which is very complicit in the oppression of your people. So, to put it explicitly, it's the kind of the thesis of the whole last episode. As a black person, how can you wear symbols of US and not be basically a hypocrite or a bootlicker or a collaborator of your own oppression? And it's a very complicated situation, and there's maybe not a right or wrong answer. And it's something I'm probably not going to talk about because I'm not black. I'm not a black American. I've not had the lived experiences of being a black person in America. So it's not my lane, and I don't really go deep into it because I'll be speaking over voices, and I'll be working on I'm a person of color, but this is again I'm not a person of color of America either. So this isn't really a lane that I'm kind of the safest person to talk into or really should be talking about. Though I will say, as I have seen multiple comments online that are kind of also very divisive about this series and how it treats the subject. You got some people who are like, well, this, I think the most positive spin on it is, well, obviously it's a Marvel show. Marvel is a entertainment corporation which works for these large capitalist companies because every corporation is capitalist, and these corporations have close ties, especially Disney have close ties with propaganda and government and the military, and obviously ultimately we'll have to lean towards portraying a favourable view of things like the military and the government because they're very closely intertwined. So I think the most positive view I've seen online from people who actually have the voices about this are kind of being like, well, this is probably about the best depiction best discussion you can portray of this, considering the context in which you can portray it in. Whilst the flip side of that is, well, this is actually very clever propaganda and very clever way of kind of hijacking social action in order to actually manipulate people of color and black people into seeing a more positive view of certain aspects of the government and police and military which they shouldn't have the same views of. It's more complicated than that, obviously, and I would be the worst person to kind of explain it to you. Not the worst person, actually, that's selling myself short there, but still not the best person to sell it to yourself to. What you should be doing, and what I should probably be doing, is engaging with more black voices and seeing what they think of this, because this show is very intimately about black experiences, and the whole point of the last episode was, to what degree can you reappropriate a symbol that used to be a symbol of your oppression and use it for your liberation, versus how much you have to basically spurn any symbology and any connection to an old governmental form which oppresses you and move on to a new thing, because you can never reappropriate it without perpetuating part of the oppression. And obviously this show ends the way it ends with Sam and with Isaiah Bradley, is that Isaiah Bradley eventually approves on screen quite emotionally with the direction that Sam's taken. So we're meant to take this. So when the two opposing ideologies, one of them then agrees with your ideology, we're meant to then assume this is the correct ideology to form, which is you can reappropriate a symbol that of your own oppression and use it for your own liberation. I mean, even though Sam says, oh, there'll still be people who are angry at me, I know that, they're informed people. The main spokesperson person to represent that ideology is now turned away, and it's again fiction is meant to be a form of communication of how we perceive the world and what our feelings are towards the world, and to contextualize our perceptions of the world. This isn't just a show. You can't, people who go to you, oh, it's just a show, don't think so deeply about it, are people who don't understand the point of fiction and drama and narratives. So this is giving a clear message about where it stands, and it's kind of a very simplistic way of what should be a very much nuanced situation. It does delve into nuance, but then it comes to a conclusion, and it's whether or not that conclusion is one you particularly agree with or not. But it does seem the ending is very wholesome, and that's often problematic because you often get very kind of So often when you have shows about racism and they end very wholesomely, it tricks you into thinking, oh, well, we've come to a solution, we've come to a problem solved, we can now chill and relax because we've dealt. Jesus Christ, what's happening with this? I don't understand why when I rub it away, it goes away. Okay, I don't know. I don't. It's Jesus. Okay, that's crazy. So we end a show that has racism as a thesis, and you end up on a very uplifting note. It tricks you to thinking that we've come to a solution, a resolve, a conclusion that's good and wholesome, and we've won, and we haven't, because ignore the show, the real world we live in right now, racism is still a problem, and agents of the government, i.e. the police, brutality on people of colour and black people are still a problem. And acceptance of black people as people of authority and figures and representing nations and symbols is something a large proportion of people are not comfortable with. We haven't solved that, but the show wants you to think we have in the context of the show existence. It's a bit, I guess, what I'm trying to say is it's kind of disingenuous to the real life situation of which it represents. Because it seems like it's wrapped up too nicely, but in the world, unfortunately, dealing with these problems isn't something you wrap up quite nicely. I'm running up time, so I'll move on to the next thing, which I perhaps can talk a bit more about, which is obviously how the show has dealt with the concept of the flag smashers, and that's another thing that's been quite divisive in the show, and even the concept of it, because as antagonists, they're meant to be synthetic antagonists, and it's whether or not you feel they're being portrayed properly, because their ideology isn't. I mean, I'm going to say I don't disagree with their ideology. We won't get into whether or not I agree or disagree with their means. I mean, obviously, anyone who knows anything about revolution knows that you cannot change the world for the better entirely peacefully. I'm sorry, you can't. Riots and violent resistance and freedom fighting are important when you're faced with violent oppression, and we do have violent oppression in the world. That's not a call to action, I guess, for legal reasons, I suppose I have to say. I mean, how you take that is how you perceive your own ideologies and your own existence and things like that. But it's an objective fact that the civil rights movement did not happen peacefully. Liberation of oppressed groups historically have never been successful completely peacefully, because we don't empower that. We don't have the framework to allow that to happen. But that's all I'm going to say on that point. In terms of the ideologies and how they're perceived, it's been back and forth. I came into this very worried that we were going to see the flag smashers as completely antagonistic, and it was going to be a very reactionary view on their ideology. Their ideology is obviously internationalism, and anti and being against the idea of borders and things like that, which I agree with. I don't believe in borders. I'm very internationalist. I believe in the concept of one global community. I don't believe in the idea of splitting resources and fighting over resources, and I think it's the source of all evil in the world. And they make a very good point of that. But then obviously, they were portrayed quite sympathetically in the beginning, and then that kind of destabilized. Like, it started from the point where Cali blew up a building full of innocent people. I mean, we're told later on that all of them were killed, but some of them were, and others were severely injured. And then through that, there was a lot of violent action, and the show kind of portrayed Cali as a more misguided ideologist who was using violence and acting villainous to get their aims, and so they were a villain through and through. They weren't this kind of potential redeemable thing. And eventually they die at the end, and their group is disbanded, and the group is defeated, and they're treated as the enemy. And there's been a couple of articles I've read about it which give good perspectives. I mean, it's also different takes. Nando V Movies has a video explaining why he thinks the portrayal of the Flag Smashers lost a lot of its nuance was because of a whole bunch of the plot line that they were going to be involved with was to do with vaccines and to do with a global pandemic, which was taken out because of the global pandemic that we're living through. If you want to read that theory, you can go to Nando V Movies and watch it. It makes a lot of sense, whether or not it's true or not, but it makes a lot of sense if it was true. There's other articles I've read about kind of how, Marvel consistently has a problem with sympathetic villains, in that often it makes its villains, I guess, too sympathetic or too kind of righteous, and realizes that actually they need to be the villain to our hero, and then kind of make the villain do something, at the kind of the second or middle point, they do something where they do something quite villainous, which means that the audience then turns against them because now they've crossed the line. And that's kind of the problem the Flag Smashers had. So we come to the conclusion where, ultimately they all get killed. Every remaining one of them dies, or at least the leaders and symbol holders die. But then, the Falcon gives a very impassioned speech about how, you're basically, Sam comes and says, you're all looking at the world from a position of privilege. You've just been in a position where you were helpless and in danger, and then you were rescued. Maybe use that new perspective to actually perceive the world differently and do good. And I think we hear at the end some words saying they do good, which it kind of harks back to what I said about things tying up too neatly. Because in the real world, people of colour, black people, marginalised groups have been telling people of privilege all the time, every day, but they're looking at the world from a place of privilege, and that's informing their decisions, and that's why change isn't happening, progress isn't happening, and problems still reoccur. Because they're not looking at the world from the perspective of the people who it matters. They're not following the principle, which I was reading about yesterday, of nihil de nobis sine nobis, which is Latin for nothing about us without us, which means you cannot make representative ideas without the people who you're representing being part of that decision-making process. He basically says that to them, and it works. But that's too simple. That's not how it works in real life, because that's what we do every single damn day, and no one changes their mind that easy. It stretches my suspension of disbelief to even believe in this fantasy existence of Marvel, where we have this, this black superhero wearing stars and stripes, carrying a legacy of a previous influential figure, comes and mentions this in this stranger world. Because if they had that kind of power, then why weren't they using it before? Clearly, there's going to be some resistance. Clearly, these people aren't political mammoths. So yeah, essentially it's portraying what would be the ideal situation of social action and how things would work in real life. But because it's too idealist, it makes you feel self-congratulatory. Like, oh, like if you're someone who isn't aware of this oppression and you see what's happening, you're like, well, yeah, of course we should be doing that. We are doing that. Of course we're doing that. That's how the world works. That's how good works. And you don't actually look at the world and be like, well, this actually isn't how it's happening. And if you're someone who is a marginalised group and has experienced depression, then you're like, well, this is very too cutesy, too easy to happen. I've overran, so I'm going to speak quite quickly. I'm also going to have to work out what the heck is happening with this and why I keep disappearing, because this is really annoying. I don't like these anti-sparkles. But let me know if you agree or disagree, and, any more nuance in the political thing. I'd love to hear some black voices, because obviously, again, like I said, I'm a black. I am trying to, as much as I can, amplify and echo the voices that I have read. But I am woefully not qualified to be that voice piece, and someone who should be the one who you listen to about that. But hopefully I've done a good enough job as I could do. So thanks for watching. I'm gonna run off, and I'll not see you next week actually, because this is the last episode, and I don't think Loki starts for another month or thereabouts. But when Loki happens, I'll see you then. Subscribe to SquishiVision Games, which is my other channel, which I do little streams at. I'll probably be more active there. I'm also going to at some point do a live reaction to the Hawkeye trailer, which I think drops last week, and the Marvel trailer for the other film, which I can't remember the full title of. But I'm going to do a reaction to that as well, but not now. But watch out for my channel. I'll do that soon. Alright, cheers guys, and I'll see you in the next. Let's scrub over to this. There we go.